All right, so everybody, welcome to another episode of Qumulex Radio. I am Josh. Aaron is on assignment today, so he will not be with us, but we are joined by Stan White from Dunright Security. And Stan, just so everybody knows, you're an integrator and you are based out of, I believe, California, right?
That's correct. We're based out of the Bay Area, and our main headquarters is here on Mare Island in Vallejo.
Perfect. And do you get good weather most of the year, or are you
We
too
have
far north?
been we've been pretty good. This summer has been real mild. It's been really nice. So I'd say October, if you're coming out to the Bay Area, October is probably the best month. You'll hit like 70s, 80s, may get 90, but
Yeah.
it's clear, not too foggy. So pretty good time to come out.
I live in Ohio, and this is my time of year where I get very sad. It's getting very cold.
Okay.
Where'd my sunshine go?
Yeah,
But really,
layers, right? The
yeah,
layers.
I think as you get older, you care about it more. I don't think I cared when I was younger, but the older I get, the more I want it to be summer all year.
I hear you.
Um, well, thanks a bunch for coming on. Really appreciate it. Really appreciate your partnership. Um, so I had a couple topics, that we kicked around that we wanted to talk a little bit about, and one that was pretty interesting to me was just when you interact with different manufacturer salespeople, what are some of the do's and don'ts, from an integrator's perspective as far as making that relationship worthwhile and good for you?
For us, I mean, we work obviously in this new world, right? Everything's going to the cloud, everything's going really fast into that where everybody has their phone and everything's running through it. But for us, it's just basically a partnership where the product can meet the demands of what it's set out to do. Into that, it's a great time for that right now, obviously, as you know. Being able to do everything from one software is awesome. But the big things we like to have control of is just being the integrator, being a channel partner, us ordering the product, us being able to bench test the product, going out to site. And then obviously that allows us to make sure that the installation is going to go smooth and efficiently in a timely manner on that side. When you're selling direct to an end user, it just seems that there's a lot of change orders, a lot of go backs, and it's just because you're talking to people that don't install it on that. And then there's obviously the power and data. Now, yes, there's a lot of stuff that's being wireless with batteries, and then there's also the NFC where your phone's
Mhm.
giving like a little short boost to do it that way. So that is coming in, but from the real meat and potatoes, I'd call, you still want power and you still want data, right? So
Mhm.
cable infrastructure into that, and then the nuances of we're talking access control. I'm talking access control right now, not so much cameras, but
Right.
for access control, you got the wireless locks, hardwire locks, but you got to really understand door hardware, and that's where a lot of people really mess up and lose a lot of money or just don't understand the trade they're trying to get into. Doors are extremely complex, as you know.
Yeah.
I know it sounds crazy. We're talking about everything is cloud based and network and all this fun stuff. But in all reality, retrofitting or just even ordering doors correctly is a huge headache even today on all the projects that we're on. So just understanding that every door is different. If it's not prepped correct, it's really hard. And then when you try to make one thing fit into another thing, it doesn't always look too nice. So that's it. It's kind of where we're at. But on the real meat and potatoes of the of selling directly to end user, why we don't like that is the RMA and the warranties. When you get down to it, it's just who deals with that. The customers don't like it when we're not going to warranty their product, but they bought it, so they own it. We don't own it, kind of thing. So that's really gets messy. We've seen a lot of companies come out, sell direct, and then eventually go through a channel partner, then come out with an MSRP and move forward. And we think that's the best way for those companies to exist because they don't want to be tied into, the warranty and the service calls and, the return back. That's not what they're, that's, well, I don't think that's how they really want to get into this marketplace
Does
onto
that
that.
affect you and your ability to have a relationship with them if they've already started going direct to the end user? Now they want to come back
Yeah,
and have
because
a,
and it's odd. There's a couple companies that still go direct end user, but yet they have a channel partner as well. And even if we sold the product first to the customer, then I just had a customer call me up and want me to install elevator controllers. But the when I get to the site, it's a multi-level building, 8 stories tall, and the elevator machine rooms on the rooftop, and their networks on the garage. So, and there's no riser system. So how do you get from A to B, right? So when you start really looking at it, the customer is bought a product, and then now you come in and you're charging, multiple crew weeks to get from A to B because there's no wireless connection to this elevator component. I know there's some proprietary software out there now with like Otis and that the companies are trying to integrate in with for elevator control. But in this case, there's nothing. This is still kind of, you got to bring one wire per floor kind of mentality. So if you got 2 elevators, a lot of cables. But either way, it just showed you that that customer, did they budget for it? Now they just bought 2 devices that in 30 days, if they can't return it, now they're paying a monthly for the SaaS fee. So now they got 2 products, and can they afford, the installation of the product? And that's now the customer is not happy,
right.
and now you have an unhappy customer, and I hate to say it, customers are always going to go for the cheapest solution, right? So why wouldn't they buy it directly if they could save money that way? And you know what I mean on that. But we look
Yeah.
at it from the other point of view. We're a partner with them. We're not trying to sell them, baked goods and be gone kind of thing. So it's more of an investment. And then we understand that, hey, these things need a lot of updates, a lot of upgrades. You put something in. What I think we're kind of getting that disposable world, not to take us off on a whole different,
No, this is great.
thing, but yeah, you put in an access system, you expect that system to work X amount of time. And now that everything's
Yes.
computer based, you got firmware upgrades, software upgrades. Who's taking care of that relationship with the customer, right? And then, these are things that are, so it's more like a partnership into it. And then these places are nice, especially if we're talking, the high end apartment complexes. They're more like a Club Med, right? They got like your amenities and your pool decks and your cabanas and your think tanks and you name it, right? Dog parks, grooming, that thing. So you can't just come in and just run cables wherever you want. Everything's got to look, like it never was there kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it's a cost starts piling up. So we like to come into the beginning, do the design, work with the manufacturers, right? Because we're a team, obviously, on that side, and then be able to get out and then give the product that the customer wants. Because I truly believe if you put it in correctly and the customer's happy, they're going to stay with you. And then as technology grows, so does more options for that system into it.
So I have a follow-up question wrapped in commentary. So hopefully my question doesn't get lost. But I was an integrator for many, many years, and I was very sensitive to the idea that, a manufacturer might go directly to my customer. And one of the reasons was I felt like, my role as an integrator was to serve not just as someone that is selling them product or selling them labor, but also I am their consultant. And so I feel like I was that entity, or my organization was that entity where that customer would say, okay, here's what I'm trying to accomplish. What are the best products to get me there? And then, to go through, because you'll go and do a walkthrough, especially like you mentioned, doors. There's always local codes. There's in many, many regions, if you put access control on a door and retrofit that, you now own the problems of that door. And that can lead to unexpected costs if you don't figure that out in advance. So it's more like you can kind of show up and say, okay, what do you want? Whether it's elevator control, whether you want to add access controlled doors, whether you want to add cameras, whatever it may be. It's the idea that you have, as you say, a partner, someone that is not trying to sell you a particular product. They're trying to understand what you're trying to do. And then here is a full picture of what will be involved. Whether it's, if you have low voltage permits where you are, or, access or security related permits are in some areas now. If you have to recondition a door in order to meet code so that it would pass inspection, like you mentioned, that elevator situation. I don't think someone that works for a manufacturer who has not spent an amount of time in the field understands the
Yeah.
concept of getting to where the network is, and the fact that that is sometimes surprisingly hard.
Yep. And
So
then
my
there's another
question is,
component, right? And the
yeah,
other component is the elevator company. Who's going to coordinate, you know what I mean? That,
and
and
there are
what's that
often
cost? And
fees
yeah,
involved
and their
with that.
cost is an eye opener as well. So
Yeah,
it's just basically setting up the table, right? Not having that communication.
yeah. So when this happens, which sounds like you've run into this at least once, you know, it's one thing when you get to walk them through the entire process, from cradle to grave, as some would say. And, you know, if there was something that was missed, or something that just didn't get included, you could probably accept some responsibility and say, darn, I missed that. And, how do you work it out with them? What I'm curious about is when a manufacturer sells directly to that customer, and now you're interacting with that customer secondarily, trying to make all this come together, and they realize that there were all these things they weren't told about, or nobody thought of. I mean, do you feel that do they take that out on you? I mean, do they see you as the friend that's trying to help them now, or are
No,
they
I
frustrated?
see. Now I get I understand exactly what you're saying. What we've noticed with technology jumping and people wanting like the bigger, let's say the bigger companies. Let's say like if you're looking at construction, you got like a massive player out there in the field, and they got X amount of projects, and maybe they have 10 to 20,000 doors they got to retrofit. You
Mhm,
know, they're going to want the best deal on that product
mhm,
on that side, and some of them will buy into the company and be part owner, or however they can get to get the cost effective. And I know that goes at a high level. So I understand the pressure of that. Where I would step back on all that is that that's fine. You can negotiate your cost to those
mhm.
customers, but it still has to run through us. So
Yeah,
we still, now our markup may not be great, but you know, they're going to say, well, you got the labor and that stuff, but um, it still runs through us because we're the ones installing it, right? So we're not going to get paid unless it's installed correctly. So from the higher level, I get why people want to buy in volumes. They get to control costs. The downside to that is that, like anything, you don't know what you don't know, kind of mentality. So we do this day in day out. So you know, and it's at our cost if we miss something. But so when we come into the thing, we're looking at it from, you know, the entire perspective onto that. I mean, it's so it's kind of like we need to have ownership, and then like we talked earlier, you know, the RMA and the warranty is such a big thing, and it's such a big hassle, right?
mhm,
To come out here and say that every single piece of equipment we get from the manufacturer is going to work at time of startup is not going to happen. So you're going to have issues. You're going to have
mhm.
issues, and then when now we're connecting to, let's say we're connecting electrified hardware, others, so there's always going to be a lot of issues. So it's like if we can come in and we take that part off, and then we're also understanding how it's getting installed. You know what I mean? That's what we do well. That's why they're hiring us, right? It's I'm not saying it's that complicated that anybody can do it, but it's like anything, it's a trade. You need to understand what we're trying to lay out here, not everything, but you're right, door code, fire, you know, ADA, accessibility, what type of
Mhm.
door. We didn't really go into. Doors are extremely complicated because they sound simple. If everything's level and everything's perfect, a door should open and close. But we know there's front pressure and there's back pressure, you know what I mean? On that side, there's hydrojacking from concrete, pushing the base plate up. There's wind pressure, we call it goes from the inside. There's, you know, there's all types of doors, glass doors, storefront doors, you know, metal door, you name it, and then thickness of doors, and then we can go on and on onto it. But a lot of mechanical parts and doors that can fill, right? If we got rods, or if we got like the Sierra Lawrence, you know, their outside rod kind of setup. So it does get very complicated. So it's just not as simple as, hey, I'm going to sell product A and it's going to work on every single thing we're putting out there. It doesn't work that way. So That's, I guess, our argument would be that to save us a lot of headaches and angst and save the customer a lot of angst. Because what the customer is going to do, if it's nuisance or going to cost them X amount of money, they're just going to move away from that technology, even though they may need that technology, right? So it's basically figuring out how to implement it at the same time in whatever 2023 economics are, but to get the product working. And at the end of the day, if we don't do that correctly, the customer is not going to, whatever project they have next, they're going to go in a different direction because of a painful experience. So you're right, they blame us. You know what I mean? Obviously, they're going to blame gun right security if it's not done correctly. They're gonna be upset at Qumulex every time they see that and want to go to a different product name. So I completely understand the dichotomy that you're talking about there. You know
Yeah.
how to separate it. Now, it's that old adage like you have one bad pizza, it's not going to stop you from eating pizza again, right? So yeah, I mean even so it's the whole idea is to get these things systems working, getting it correctly, knowing how to lay it out. But at the end of the day, we're just talking about install. So when you go to the construction or the owner, what do you do after that? That's the real question. These things will fail. It's just when are they going to fail? It's a weird way of looking at all products, but after you've done this long enough, you start understanding it's like how do we understand how it's going to fail, and then how do we try to prevent it or try to update the customer of when it's going to fail.
Yeah. Like even your, electronic locks have a certain number of cycles, and
Mhm.
the number depends on the product that you put in.
Right,
There's
and
some that
then
are rated for 900 and some for 1600 and so on.
yeah,
And you need to
and what's
understand when that's going to happen so you can fail gracefully, hopefully
yeah.
get that changed in advance. But
In
um,
your access control, you're relying on other equipment. You know what I'm saying? Like, so you're talking about doors, you're talking about electrified
right.
hardware. Those things fail. They never call that, you know what I mean? It's not, you get out there, they're always blaming the reader or your system's not working. We're badging it, but it's not
Yeah.
releasing, right? So it's always access control that gets beat up and not the door. But no, it's definitely doable. It's not rocket science. Nothing we do is that complicated. It's just that there's just the right way to do it and there's the incorrect way to do it. And I think the value to the customer of going through an integrator is that the life expectancy of that system is going to be less expensive than
Hmm.
if you cut out the integrator, because when it fails, then that's when the cost is going to start piling up.
Yeah. Well, and it's expertise doesn't necessarily mean that the task is, as you say, rocket science. It comes from the repeatability, we've done this so many times and in so many different environments, and you kind of learn one thing at a time along the way that really builds up into this mountain of knowledge. And you almost kind of have a checklist in your head, even if you don't have one physically, where you're thinking, okay,
Mhm.
here's all the troubles that we can have. So these are all the things that we need to look for and all the things that we need to think about. And again, it's always been my point with trying to, direct sell and go around an integrator. The integrator to me is so important because, again, you're bringing that experience to the table, and you're not just selling them something. You're helping them avoid pitfalls, and you're helping them make sure that they understand the total budget.
Yep.
So if somebody just calls them and says, "Hey, our cool cloud system now has elevator control. Would you like a couple elevator controllers?" And then they sell it to them, and then they say, "Well, call your installer," and they'll just plug it right in. Well, they have done no assessment on
Yeah.
what that is
Yeah.
going to take,
And they
and that
preload
is a
them with
problem.
cost. Yeah, they'll
Yeah,
preload them with cost as well, Josh. They'll say, well, this should only cost X amount to get to sell, because that person selling is just trying to get numbers so they hit their bonus. You know what I mean? They're off to the next sell. So
so
you're
when you're
right.
saying that, you're saying that they'll tell the customer this is what that install ought to cost you.
Yeah, they'll even come out and say what they think the cost should be, or what you should not accept, kind of thing, which is kind of interesting. So it's kind of interesting that way. It's I don't know. I've always
You don't
believed in
know that
sidewalks.
if you don't
Huh?
go on site and walk,
Yeah. I mean,
And
what about
look, you
abatement?
don't
You
know.
know, exactly. What if you got a building that's asbestos and you got abatement? You know, what's that cost? Or how much is the elevator going to charge you to, even though it's 2 hours of work, they're going to charge you a full crew day and you're going to walk away with that. So that's the thing. It's just education. You know what I mean? And I'm
Mhm.
not saying every integrator out there is great as well, as we know, but you try to get in, you try to do the best for the customer, and then try to truly understand, you know, what they need and what they're working with. Sometimes you got to tell them the truth. It's like, look, your elevator is X amount of age and it can't accept, you know, the technology you're asking for, or you'll have a new elevator that has the sound, like we've been noticing with Otis and Kone and these proprietary elevators coming out with their own software that integrates with different platforms. And we can tell the customers, like, look, instead of going, you can't, it's proprietary, you can't just take a controller. There's no more relays on their board that will accept this anymore. So what you got to do is get like an open API and use a third party company, maybe like Braxos or, you know,
Yeah,
something to that to get that integration in, so you can
but
you
it's
can
still
pull
a
it. So
cost. Yeah, it's a
yeah, so
recurring
it's just
cost.
it's assessing the situation. You know, selling somebody one thing, never being to site, don't even know what elevator they have.
Yeah.
That's a failure, right? Not telling them that the elevator, and finding out what the cost for the elevator company to do the connection because, hey, because of law and codes, you know, we can't get in that elevator machine room. So it's, you know what I'm saying. So
Yeah.
there's a lot we could go into this for hours, but I would say the best thing for me is having the manufacturer go through a channel partner system, come out with fixed pricing. That's the other thing that's been driving us nuts is when customers have different costs for different companies based on how many volumes of sales that is. It's maddening when you have a job where you don't know what number they have. You're just going off whatever MSRP you get from that company. You know what I'm saying? That's another big issue we've been running
Yeah.
into a lot lately because they'll come back and say, "Hey, we only paid X amount on that side." So yeah, having a fixed cost, having a reputable RMA and warranty policy in place is big for us. We've dealt with a lot of companies that are so new right now, kind of like beta testing. I kind of feel we're in the beta test world right now. And that's really hard on us, and especially when there's no RMA process in there, when you're like, you know, that we even have companies that sell products that don't have any mounts, so you can't mount their product. And I'm
Yeah.
not I'm not even making this up. The software is amazing. The product is like the afterthought.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
when you get into that, so that's what we're facing, man. We're facing a lot of different problems.
So when you work with someone, whether it's the manufacturer in general or whether it's the salesperson that you're interacting with, I mean, what kind of interactions make you want to do more business with them that you say, okay, this is good and I like this and I want to work with this person or this company?
So the product that they're pushing out has to be relevant, right? So we're trying to find a solution. I'll go off of commercial. Well, I'll take commercial and apartments. That seems to be the only thing they're really building here in California is a multi-use building, right? So you got the parking garages. It's going to be divided into two sections, residence, and then it's going to have commercial. Then you're going to have your first floor commercial. So that's a different access and CCTV and intrusion system. And then you're going to have your apartments on the floors up. So that's going to be more communal. So you're dealing with a lot of different challenges. So you got to have communal, you got to have businesses. Everything runs at different times, and then you have a
Mhm.
lot of different interesting security collaborations, right? So if you ever hear like in the hospitality world, front of house and back of house, normally the back of the house are going to have a alarm contact that the reader overrides. So you swipe your card, you go through, but it always stays armed, and they got some kind of security person monitoring this. So they know if somebody opened the door in the back of the house that's not supposed to be there. In the front of the house, you have intrusion alarm, right? Perimeter protection is very common in cities in the high rise when you got a security booth and they just want to make sure everything's armed. And then you want to integrate that in with access control. And then now on the communal side, everybody wants everything to go through their phone, our QR code, our disposable. So you're dealing with that as well. And then that's to be honest, that's what's exciting to me about you guys with Qumulex. I know you guys are like all companies adapting and growing, but the fact that you guys have cameras and access control integrated, I think is powerful, right?
Yeah.
On that side, our world here in the Bay Area, video intercom doesn't matter if it's commercial or residential, is a key player. And you're looking at those companies trying to get into the access world right now. So it's kind of understanding what the customer is looking for. We're a big believer in one database, one software database, fully integratable, scalable, and then it's an exciting time, right? So we can tie in wireless logs, your normal hardwired location, basically at common doors, tied into garage systems. On that, your automatic gates, and then tied into intrusion alarm, and then having AI and analytics tied in on the camera side. And then, you know what I mean? So it's basically, we're getting to a point that's pretty exciting on the camera side. We're really looking at things that are, yes, everything's event driven, but at the same time, where do people gather, right? So on the commercial side, heat mapping is important. Where do people go? So we're going to want to put our marketing, or we're going to want to put our information stuff in these spots, right? Or where you gather. And so it's like, not only are we talking about security, which is important, but we're also talking about everyday use, like actually using the systems. Because I think if you look 10 years ago, everybody just had access control. It lived on a computer by itself. You went to one person,
Right.
they gave you a badge. Camera system lived on a system. If there was an event, hopefully it recorded and you go play back. Now it's all day long checking it, but you're not really checking it for the event driven stuff anymore. Now you just want to see, who's on the floor, who's doing this on that. So it's very, very interesting how
Do you
that's
think Ring
space.
has impacted that? Because I feel like a lot of people watch their Ring cameras in their house. And then do you think they take that attitude to the office? Because I agree with you. I think there used to be a time where you had kind of maybe a monitoring station if there was a
No.
guard or a reception or somebody that would let people
Mm-hmm.
in. Other than that, people, that DVR would sit in the closet and
I
then
think the cell
it was
phone.
like
I
getting
think
discovered.
having a computer in your pocket. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Yeah.
Having a computer in your pocket really changed it, because now if you look at it, and then companies like MyQ with LiftMaster was one of the first ones to come
Mm-hmm.
out with the mobile app.
Mm-hmm.
And then you had Ring, and before Ring was really Skybell with Honeywell, right? So they own that technology, but Ring
Mm-hmm.
uses it. And then now we're seeing companies like Deep Sentinel come out with the basic video surveillance with two-way talk down onto it. But I mean, now Ring and these things, in my head, I look at that as like a single residence device, right?
No question.
Um, we like to have the multi-tenant, multi-unit kind of attached to
Mm-hmm.
it. But no, you're right. That's what I'm talking about. It doesn't matter if it's a door, it's the access, it's the camera. We're seeing some systems have a camera in the access that record.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but no, everything. Yeah, you're right. QR. You look at Teleport. They came out with the QR where they're just using like webhooks to take your access in your camera system. It's just flexibility, adaptability, and then everything. Mobility kind of thing. That's what I want to say right there. Those three
Yeah.
words. And that's it. I want to be able to give somebody a temporary code. I want to give a vendor for 1 week and just send it to them, and they're only allowed between 8 and 5. You know what I mean? That's the excitingness with the software that we're dealing with, right? It gives people a lot of flexibility, remote capabilities. We're seeing that in the Airbnb really push it with companies like Seam
Mm-hmm.
and these things where they're adapting any type of wireless lock. And then you're looking at companies that are trying to use a data card versus basically a hub for the
Mm-hmm.
communication path, and those technologies at the same time. But where we come back as integrators, we're the ones that have to, what's the environment, right? So, a lot of our cities right now are not doing too well with crime and just what's going on. So if you put any nice technology on a building, it's a good chance anything shiny is going to get ripped off or destroyed, right? And then newer technology, when they're trying to use the iOS systems, sun really impacts heat and sun really impacts these things and they shut down. So, how do you make something vandal proof, but still mobile, accessible at the same time? And so that's what we're really seeing. We're seeing a lot of projects that come out. It looks like you got a nice iPad on your building, and then either somebody sketched something not too friendly on it, and you just can't change out the glass, right? You got to send the whole thing back, or they break it, because it's glass, or they steal it. So that's kind of where we're at. You know what I mean? Like, so, and if you want to go really secure, you're looking at analog solutions, the old RS, 232 types. And then if you want anything nice and new, it's all going to be PoE. It's all going to look all fancy, but it doesn't stay on the wall too long in these type of environments. So it's a lot of challenges out there.
Yeah, that's true. And I guess that's a good point really you're making, where I was wondering why the behavior changed as far as, how the customers use the systems. It seems like just really the technology now is better and more flexible, so much easier, whether it's browser on a, desktop or on mobile. We have way more accessibility to these items than we did. I guess with the DVR, you pretty much had to have, something connected right to it.
Yeah,
In many
dedicated.
cases.
Yeah. I mean, so from a security point of view, the older way was more controllable, right?
Yeah,
So
well, that's fair.
if I controlled my software, I had it only on one thing, because like we do know that we saw Ring get hacked,
Mhm.
right? So it's I think, and that's where the older school mentality versus the newer is kind of different. Everything new is just accessibility remotely, right?
Yeah.
And but security wise, that's not really, how do you secure that, right? So I don't think the industry is moving to more security side. You know what I mean? I think it's more just accessibility side. Keyless is more, most of these companies coming out, they're not really true access control systems that give you like a door jar notice and a force entry or door position, right? It's more if it's a hardwired system, the lock has that capability in it,
Mhm.
on that, but it feels more key replacement, if that makes sense to you
Yeah. I
on
think there's a
that. But
space for that though. I mean, I'm sure there are some customers that
yeah,
it's more about the
well,
key replacement than how secure. That was sort of my
yeah,
argument about Wiegand a few episodes back. The only person on earth, I guess, that doesn't want to kick Wiegand
uh,
around. But yeah, because I feel like there are customers that, they're not going to spend any more. Maybe they have part of the infrastructure already there. Um, they're not expecting to be Fort Knox. They're expecting that they don't want to deal with the hassle or the responsibility of physical keys, especially if they let someone go. Anybody can go to Home
yeah.
Depot now, and I can just stick a key in the robot and tell it to make me how many keys. And it's not checking anything. It's not going to say you're not, doesn't care if it says do not duplicate. There's no
And you're
control
right.
over that.
And you're right.
But
And the locks are
people want to
putting
keep
in.
track of stuff and not have to deal with that issue. And for them, like a Wiegand solution, even though you could buy one of those flippers or you could do different things and hack into it, from their perspective at that point, well, they were just going to put a brick through the window anyways, and I'll just catch them on whatever cameras I have, and I'll let my alarm go off. They're not a bank, not a school, not a,
Yeah.
you know, an area
It's
like that.
it's a mobile key versus
Yeah.
security, right? And we see that a lot. I mean, when you look at wireless locks, if you're putting in a cylindrical wireless lock, that's not much in a door when you really think about it. And
Yeah.
then you go into the interconnect because all the ADA rules in most
Mhm.
states, right? So that's a little better because you get a deadbolt and then you get a kind of a latch, right? Interconnected.
Yeah.
And then you get a mortise lock. But a lot of people don't even think about door hardware and how accessible it is to get into a door. Like, you know what I mean? We could sit here and just talk about applications, but sometimes your door is really going to limit what you can put into it.
Yeah.
So you're right. It's just more just keeping on the honest people using a mobile app instead of a key. But we're not really going to do anything to prevent accessibility for break-ins. You know what
Yeah.
I'm saying? So but it's a different time. I would say 90% of all jobs we're on and all conversations we have on, whatever side of it, we're doing a retrofit or we're doing engineering a new construction project, it's always about accessibility onto it. And then on the commercial side, it's more about accessibility and coordinating with elevator control, right? So it's just not cab control where I can just call the cab and go to any floor I want. Then you get into a more diverse system. On the commercial side, the uptick we've been seeing is that they want all the mobility, but they want to integrate in with their intrusion alarm system and their camera system.
Yeah.
So you kind of pull away from the video intercom, but even video intercoms are really prevalent now in the commercial space. So to me, that's just part of access control. It just gives you a database and a live view. But yeah, so that's where we're at. Commercial still with like the labs, and then you get into the complex. You look at some of these churches that have schools, and they have the church, and they have all the auditorium room and everything, and so they need to keep those buildings separate, but they all want it on a mobile app, and so it's so complex. There's a lot of layers. We're dealing with a lot of different layers on this. On that, we haven't gone into the camera side. Josh,
It's okay.
all we talked about was the fun door side, but and then you look at cameras, the technologies and camera is going so fast. I mean, it's amazing, right? The power we have. There's industries really pushing this, like the medicine industry and the manufacturing industry. But you look at that, and then understanding all this power, and then really truly understanding how much bandwidth and how much PoE power you need. You know what I mean on that side. So I think cameras is probably one of the easiest things to install. You know what I mean? When we look at it, when we get technicians in and training, the tough part of cameras is more on the integrating into networks on that side, and then integrating with companies that have IT departments, and then they have special divisions in their IT department called security IT departments, and getting through their firewalls, and because everybody wants that mobility and accessibility, and everybody wants to see it and updates and this and that, but in reality, that opens up a lot of holes to the outside world. So that's where it gets shut down. So even though you got all these great benefits in analytics and the AI component, AI is thrown out there a lot, but it's not now. You know what I mean? It's taking data, compressing, and going back. Now that's going to speed up, so it's not that long of a lag between, and it's really impressive. The AI capabilities and what we're seeing, what people are asking for is just unworldly kind of thing. You know what I mean?
It is exciting. And you mentioned like the IT departments. I mean, they have a tough job because you have everyth's on the network now, not just the traditional IT stuff. And, I remember I used to do telephone systems, and I remember all the headaches getting those things on the network initially and not even having enough IP addresses available, because what do you mean there's 300 phones on my network now? But now everything is on the network, security and otherwise. And at the same time, they're dealing with way more security threats, cybersecurity threats to the network than ever before, with far more devastating consequences. And so I used to be in IT, so I guess I have a soft spot for them too. I mean, now they're kind of in that struggle of, okay, I've got to give you all this freedom and all this accessibility for all these devices that you want for different business or safety purposes. But then at the same time, you're not going to be real happy with me if we get hit with a $15 million ransom. So that's a lot to balance.
You need independence. You need independent systems, right? So you need independent systems, but a lot of newer buildings, if they build the infrastructure to support it, right, or they build the way to interlink the infrastructure so you can have basically independent networks into it. Like if you separated security, and we even got companies that separate every part of security, but you separate security on its own infrastructure separate from your business and all that stuff, that's how you have to do it. But trying to convert most buildings, because most buildings were put in based off of old building code where they just brought in the telco, as you know, and
Hmm.
they brought in power, and then they brought in cable basically on a single wire for like for your television and stuff that way. It used to be direct TV or cable on that. So these buildings, and then there's no riser systems for IDFs or your MPO, you know what I mean? Like there's no
Hmm.
access. So you're and that's where the money is, and that's what's kind of interesting, right? And then that gets us into the kind of the what I call this the remote internet side with like the cradle points and the outdoor routers where you're buying the SIM
Hmm.
cards on the LTE, but those things are limited on how many megs up you can get. And then once we start going into, I would say, real camera systems, let's say we have 100 to 300 cameras, and majority of them are 180s or multi sensors. You know what I mean? Where you've got 15 megapixels plus on each
Yeah.
camera. Now not only do you have to have a server system to support it, just because you gotta have megabits per second coming in, and it's got to support that much traffic. But then you gotta, and how do you push that out? It's not megs down, it's megs out. And then you see a lot of
Yeah.
these first companies that are doing all the web based, like they're dumbing down the cameras to 1080, basically turning them into like a 2 megapixel camera,
Uh-huh.
and then shooting it up because there's not many companies who want to pay a couple $1,000 a month for their network fees. So it's definitely a you see it's interesting. We
Yeah.
got all this power, all this technology, but and then it all comes back down to other things that we have to connect to, right? I mean, it's interesting looking at it from that point of view
Yeah.
because
I think,
nobody's on site anymore, right? I have to be able
right.
to see it somewhere else. But yeah.
I think even when people go back to the office more fully, whatever that means, whatever that looks like
Hmm.
long term, I still think the cat's out of the bag, you know, whether it's, your ring system at home or your cloud system at work. I mean, I think people now expect wherever I'm at, I can do what I need to do. I can see it all. If
Yeah.
I have a lot of sites, I can manage it all. And I don't see us going back, but I do think that, cybersecurity is an issue, is a concern for everyone. And I think that, we'll see these technologies evolve, and I think we'll see the best practices in IT evolve. And, just as things get easier, there will be all new threats we hadn't even dreamed of, and we'll be changing it all again. So I think that'll probably be a forever battle
I mean, we got
that
the
we have
NBA
to fight.
rules with the cameras, right? So hopefully that cuts out the cookies that were embedded in these
Yeah.
systems that we're trying to find how to get on the network. So on that, but I'm pretty sure they'll come out with the next plan, right?
There's
On that
always
side.
something. Yeah. Always something we've never thought of.
But
But
usability, right? It's how do we make systems that are usable?
mhm.
And I think that's been the biggest jump in cameras, right? It's easy to create a situation. We see the trade word a scene. It's like we're creating a scene, right? If this
Mhm.
happens, that happens, and then I want this to do this or this to tell that
Mhm.
kind of thing. So in that's kind of automation as well as we're seeing. But in
Yeah.
that in that quorum, we can then the cameras to me are the smartest part of all security systems because eventually they're going to get facial recognition even better. We're seeing that with
Mhm.
like some access companies with their readers, right? They have a facial
Mhm.
recognition or, on that side, and then based on facial recognition, then that tells everything what to do. I wouldn't, I think that's where we're still evolving to. You know what I mean? Like there's still the
Yeah.
readers, you see different things, but it's just kind of getting to that point of it. You know what I mean? That's where I just kind of feel like we keep going, stepping and stepping, and eventually, but it's definitely interesting. We're doing more things that are so foreign to me, like QR codes, right? We're not even putting a reader on the wall. We're not putting like a telephone entry system on the wall. They either got it etched in their glass or there's a big sign that you can look in and hold your phone to. And then now you're on now you can call people and you're on a directory. on that side, and then you can tie in. So it's definitely a lot of pluses. But my side, I'm old school. How do you? I need redundancy, right? If network's offline,
Uh-huh.
none of that stuff works,
Right.
right? Power is not on. I need to have a key override. That's why I'm still not a big fan of the wireless key, no key wireless lock that they sell because they can sell it cheaper, right? Because they're just trying to buy volumes. But we've already seen it. The fire department will come in and knock in every door because they're not going to waste the time to get a key, kind of thing. So
That's correct.
there's no key. We're not gonna take
Yeah.
a battery to each one and try to jump them. So it's just kind of I'm more old school that way. I love the wire things into it more than I like wireless, but we do an insane amount of wireless now because you have to. And then networks. So if you want to, I know we were talking earlier about networks and IT, and I don't think there's very few jobs we do that is not connected to a network. I mean, I
I would
don't.
think it would be a very small percentage at this
And
point.
your guys' system's interesting. You have to get your system online to program it,
Mhm.
right? So you guys are in which is fine, but in most construction worlds, it's hard to get network always seems to come in at the end, right?
Yeah.
So it's hard to wire the buildings up and get everything. So it's more interesting. We got cradle points and hotspots and try to do it that way. So there is some downside to it, right? Pros and cons, but every
Versus a
system now,
totally offline system, you can just log straight into the box and who
yeah,
cares? It's a trade-off. Like you said, it's the accessibility and visibility, where you get
mhm,
all of that, but then you need that network and you need that cloud to give
yeah,
you that. But then you lose some of the, I guess, benefits of the simplicity of the old world. And yeah, we've
yeah,
tried with, initially with the gateways to be just a completely offline type system that wouldn't need to touch the cloud much, but we update it too much. Like it, as you say,
yeah,
things move fast. I mean, it is when you're in the cloud world, you find that rapid development and containerization. You're just always flying forward, and there's just no way to be both. It's something we've kind of settled
yeah,
on. Is we're a cloud box, and if you get disrupted from the internet, if you lose that connection, you're still going to be able to get to it and use it and work locally. But um, I think we've stopped thinking we would ever be just like a totally offline box too, you know.
yeah. I mean,
So
it's the way
yeah,
it's
but it's a
going.
trade-off. It's a trade-off, and
There's
but
always
nobody
pros and
wants
cons.
nobody wants
Yep.
to lose all that visibility they get. But um, hey, this is probably the most fun podcast I've done so far. And if Aaron, you're watching, it's because you're not here. Just
Nothing,
kidding.
nothing
Just
but love
kidding.
for Aaron. Yep, yep.
Yes, he's great. Awesome, Stan. Thank you
Well,
so
thanks,
much
Josh.
for coming on. This was really enjoyable, and I think you have a lot more to say. So I may invite you on again in the future if you want to come back, and
No problem.
we'll
No
we'll even
problem.
see if Aaron's around. Get Aaron involved. Do the triple box.
Yeah. No, this is awesome. Brainstorming, understanding situations, and then how can we place ourselves in a position just to have one solution for it. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah,
basically it. So that's what we're really pushing for. The more stuff we can do on one platform, this makes our lives easier.
yeah. No,
I
I
mean, that's
totally
just
agree, and we're not doing the easy thing, but I think it's the right thing, and it's continuing to get better and better, and I think that just it adds to that simplicity. How many things do I have to open up? And if we can get to a place where it's just the one, I think that's what everybody really prefers. So, well,
definitely. All
listen,
right, Josh.
awesome,
Awesome,
awesome
sir.
talking with you, and don't be a stranger. And we will have you on
Uh-huh.
again. And for the rest of
Okay.
you, we'll see you next time.